Hello everyone, my name is Ken Pooch Van Druten. I am the front of house. I've been here since 2018, the beginning of the Legacy of the Beast tour. We're out here now doing an additional tour with all kinds of new songs. It's really, really great. And if you haven't seen it, you should come out. And this is my stuff. I just thought I'd give you a little rundown of kind of the things that I have that I'm using to create Iron Maiden sound for you. I use the main focus of my rig is the console. It's made by a company, Digico, an English company, of course, an English company for an English band. I use this console with every client that I work for, and especially for Iron Maiden. It sounds fantastic. It's a SD7 with quantum engines in it, which means that it's had a quantum upgrade. So the computers that are part of this surface have been upgraded a couple of years ago to some really, really super fast, high-tech, almost gaming computers to be able to run DSP and give me the ability to do some things that I wasn't able to do before. It's really, really a great sounding desk. That's kind of the centerpiece of everything that I do. If you notice, I create snapshots for every song, which means basically a picture of how the song should start, or how the guitar should be, or how the bass should be in the mix. And when I create snapshots, it does all kinds of things. It moves about 300 parameters per snapshot to create those kind of things. Some of the things you can see here are when I click a snapshot, it will change faders. You can kind of see, you'll see a fader move slowly. I can program all those things into here so that, for instance, when we get to a guitar solo, I can turn Davey up using a snapshot and turn some other things down so that Davey becomes the focus of the of the moment. And then the next snapshot will bring us all back to where we started, Davey back into the mix, etc. So you would be surprised probably to learn that there are over, I'd say, 75 different snapshots in this show. So there are moments in each song where a bunch of parameters change. And that's all can be done with this console, and that's what makes it superior to some others. Great sounding desk, great front end, that's why I use it. Along with this desk is the Waves system, which is actually plugins. They're sound plugins that people use in the studio. I use them live because it's like having a giant outboard rack of analog gear, but it's in a computer. So if you notice over here, this particular screen is showing what's happening with the Waves thing. In this case, we're kind of seeing Bruce's channel and the different plugins or different effects processors I'm using for Bruce. So you'll see at the beginning, here's this one, and then this is the second one in the slot, this is the third, this is the fourth, fifth, and so on. Those all also parameter change with every snapshot. So the console is connected to this computer as well. And those will do things like different reverbs, different delays, widening things for guitars. For Adrian, I do a lot of delays when he solos to have a swimminess to them, so I add delay. And that's all done, again, with the focus of the console and then controlling this particular computer. There's 64 racks in this computer of different stuff. Just quickly, if you go through it, Bruce has a rack, Adrian vocal, Steve vocal, there's some reverbs, the acoustic. Every guitar has its own kind of rack. I can show you some of these things. Let's look at a guitar group maybe. Let's look at Ionic and see what we're doing here. So there's a very nice emulation of a compressor. This was made by a company called Gira, and it was a compressor that was probably made in the 50s or the 60s. And now they've made a computer emulation of it, and it's fantastic. It sounds like the original, and that's why I use it. So that's on Ionic. Also, he has another EQ kind of thing. It's a multi-band compressor and an EQ at the same time, and finally a multi-band compressor on the end of all that. So as you can see, there's a lot going on. And that's kind of the main focus of the sound. You'll also notice down in this rack, it's hard to see, I think Don's gonna get a shot of it, but those are some analog pieces of gear that I use that I just can't find a computer emulation that sounds as good as those analog pieces. And so there's basically 4 different things that I'm using, made by a company called Neve, which is a very, very famous old school console company. They've been around also since the 60s. And they make amazing analog gear. So there's a master bus processor in there. There's a master bus converter. Another piece of gear that I use, which is very interesting, is something called the Creamliner. It's made by a company called Sonic Farm, and its whole purpose in life is to make distortion. And you would think that distortion is a bad thing, but really it's not. Some of the things that are lost in a digital piece of gear are distortion, and distortion is pleasing to the human ear. A certain amount of distortion. A lot of distortion is not pleasing to the human ear, but just a little bit of distortion is pleasing to the human ear, as it turns out. And I have that across my whole mix bus, and it creates the illusion of an analog desk versus just a digital desk. A digital desk sounds great by itself, but if I can add just a little bit of distortion to the output of that desk and make it sound like an analog desk, I get all of the things with the snapshot control and all of the things that you can't have on an analog desk. I get all of those things along with the sound of an analog desk. And that's the Sonic Farm Creamliner. And that's it. There's a lot of guys out there that, don't use a lot of computer emulation. They stick with a big giant rack of analog gear. That's hard to maintain. It often doesn't work every day. A lot of times they go out of calibration and they don't sound the same, whereas a computer item sounds the same every single day. That's just my philosophy, and it's kind of the way that I've done it. I think if you're a sound guy, you would call it in the box. And so that means it's within a computer network. I think you'd be surprised to know that there's probably, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. There's 12 computers here at front of house. And 6 of them are Mac Minis, which I'm about to get to, but the others are this whole Waves thing and this console. And they all have to be networked together and running together, which is a difficult thing if you know anything about networking. But anyway, every single day we fire up 12 computers and try to get them to talk to each other. So that's a difficult task. Then the last couple of things that I have are these 2 computers. There are 2 different computers happening here. One is a computer that basically its whole job in life is to record the left and right of this console so that we could use it for any sort of video releases that we have or whatever. I'm recording the output of this console using a software program called Pro Tools. And then the top part of this is a program called Machine, which allows me to trigger any sort of samples. So for instance, in the show, Alexander the Great has a sample in the beginning that starts, and in the past, there's been, like, woe to you, O earth, and me, that all of those things come from this device, which is a trigger, and it's triggering a computer down here that's a piece of software. So whenever I start, I'm the one that starts Alexander the Great. I hit that and it starts, and there's a sample playing right now of that, and that continues on until the band starts playing. So that's part of my job as well. I start Doctor Doctor, I start the actual Caught Somewhere in Time beginning, and so all of those things fall onto me to start those tasks. Monty Python at the end when you walk out, that also comes from that machine. Then finally over here in this second half, which is a whole other computer, is a multi-track recording device. So I'm able to actually take every single individual track that's coming out of this console, record them individually, so that anyone can go back later on and take the show and record, multi-track recordings of that and mix them for a live album release, for example. But I also utilize this tool for something called virtual playback. And virtual playback is where I record the show from the night before, then today I come in and I actually play back the show from the night before as a multi-track event. It comes back into my console as a multi-track event and allows me to hear individual things by themselves as I'm listening to my mix. So, for instance, I can hear just Adrian by himself, or I can hear Yannick by himself, or just the drum kit, or just Bruce, and work on those things to make them better. And also listen in the room that we're in to see if there needs to be any changes in individual instruments to make them sound better for the room environment that we're in. So that's called virtual playback, and I'm using a piece of software called Reaper. It's a well-known multi-track piece of software. So there's that. And then the last two computers over here, one is just a drive computer that's basically controlling the amount of volume that's going to the left and right speakers, and then the side speakers, and then how much is in the sub and how much is in the front fill. It takes my left and right that's coming out of here, matrix itself out into 4 different outputs. We have individual control of those with EQ and volume. So that's utilizing that, and utilizing 2 things down here called Lake processors. So that's what the left-hand computer is doing. The right-hand computer is doing a piece of software called Smart, which is a visual representation of what you're hearing. So you can kind of see it's using a microphone right here. So like if I whistle, you can see that whistle is at a certain frequency, and I'm able to have a visual representation of what things look like. I'll show you an example of what the show looks like. This is the show happening right now. So this is a visual representation of what's coming out of my console. And you're able to actually select certain frequencies so that I'm able to see, oh, maybe that's too much frequency of 325. Maybe there's too much 325 in my mix, and I'm able to go back and look in my mix and see if I need to do something about it. So that's a very, very handy tool. It also records the sound pressure levels that we're generating in the room. We're very conscious about not causing any sort of hearing damage for you guys, so we run those levels at a measured volume so that we know exactly what we're putting out into the room so as not to cause any hearing damage. That's pretty much my rig. Down here I have some effects that are also analog effects on top of what I had in that rack. I forgot about that. But they're just reverbs, and one of them is a chorus that's on Bruce's vocal. Yeah, that's my rig. I hope you enjoyed it.